What up, though? What up, though? Um, Man, we back for another one. Week 6, AAS 477, Black Power, Fight for Black Liberation, 1966 we started, but the class is 68 to 1980. Man, can't believe we made it this far through. This is gonna be a good week. Definitely got a lot for us. Ready to explore and ready to have a really good conversation with. If you're watching, you're probably thinking like, why are you on Sunday at 11? Life, get to life in, and the class still got to go on. You know what I'm saying? That's how we go. But today was a special time. Usually I would wait until Saturday to do it. But this week is a little bit different. So we coming now. The good thing about the class is it's on demand. So anytime you want to go back and watch it, you can. I'll make sure the links are available and everything is there. So I'm happy everybody is with me today. Can't wait to get going on a really good discussion. Let's just jump right into it. Next week, we'll do more of our midterm review, and we'll do things as we get ready to move into the later stages of the class. But I just want to jump into it today. So this week is the Black Power movement and transition. This week, we will discuss how the efforts of COINTELPRO and just the movement over time, facing everything it had to, started to change. And this is specifically through the lens of the Black Panther Party, like we've been going down the whole time. This week is a very telling week in a lot of different ways. We're going to talk about, our Black Power defined is through Eldridge Cleaver. So we'll look at Black Power through his lens. If you've been with me, we've been going, down the lineage of Black Power individuals and kind of taking their perspective and kind of using their work to define Black Power as opposed to me defining the Black Power. We're also going to talk about the government, happenings of the time. So Nixon's administration, rise and fall, Watergate and his eventual resignation. COINTELPRO gets caught in the crosshairs here as we talk about the anti-war movement and Vietnam. Then we'll talk about how the ideological split between Huey P. Newton and Eldridge Cleaver, among other things, led to an underground movement for what used to be the Panthers, and then the Panthers decided to go in another direction. And so we'll talk about that, and then we'll also talk about how some of those underground movements led to some of our favorite heroines, I guess I would say, Angela Davis and Assata Shakur, out of the many we could have picked for this week. And then finally, you see, I got my girl Kathleen right there, and brother Bobby doing it big. Here in the background. And then also we will talk about kind of what's next for the Panthers, what's next for the movement, and how we'll continue through the class. This is week 6. We only got a couple more left, and then we'll be on to our next thing. So let's get started. So first, we're going to talk about our Black Power defined international connections through Eldridge Cleaver, Nixon administration rise and fall, the Great Split, and then some underground movements and some other things in the middle. All right, so our Black Power defined is through Eldridge Cleaver. He's been a mainstay in the conversation, and so we don't have to go all the way back to Soul on Ice, joining the Panthers, the 1968, after the Dr. King assassination. He and 15 other Panthers got into it with some cops, which led to little Bobby Hutton being murdered by police, and Eldridge leaving the country and going to Cuba and then Algeria along the way. So, what I want to talk about here, and it's kind of centered in what we were talking about, or what we'll be talking about later around the split of Huey and Eldridge, but I want to kind of put some more context to it. So Eldridge Cleaver was a rock star, to say the least. Even before he left, he brought the credibility to the Panthers in that, he had a New York Times best-selling book. He had a personality that was unlike any other, and he was a take no kind of individual. So having him around was, absolutely amazing for the Panthers. And it came at an interesting time because, 1967 is when Huey goes away, and then brother Bobby started getting in his mess. And then so Eldridge is there to kind of be the stabling force in the party while the original leaders were locked up. Um, so yeah, so he leaves America, headed to abroad, in exile. And so at this point, 1968, you got Huey still locked up over the situation between he's being charged for killing a cop. You have Bobby in and out of prison or jail for things that COINTELPRO said he did along the way, conspiracy to do that, conspiracy to do this, just basically keeping Panther leaders out of the party. And now you have Eldridge gone. So now you have a party back home facing full attack by the government, a COINTELPRO program. And so you have David Hilliard, who is the chief of staff, one of my favorite Panthers. David Hilliard, chief of staff for the Panthers, is left to kind of pick it up. And I usually tie H. Rat Brown in it too in this time, but I'll get back to that for the next or the time after this one. And so now you have a party in peril because they've been attacked. No central leadership of the traditional leadership, but as like in sports, next man, next person up, that was going on in the party. So things are moving forward. So, this Black Power defined is through the lens of international solidarity. And so Malcolm, well, like I could even take a step back if you want to go further. Garvey was a part of the international, Africa, back to Africa, Pan-Africanist ideology. So was W.E.B. Du Bois. So many in our lineage. Malcolm, with the when he left the nation and wanted to, bring our our brothers and sisters from Middle East and from Africa into the fight as well. So this isn't anything new. And Eldridge made the most out of what he could during at the time, but being disconnected from America really helped him see things, but it helped the Panthers at home see some things too. He wanted to bring the North American Liberation Front to Cuba with hopes of doing like a reverse Bay of Pigs. And Castro was like, "Nah, that ain't what we on. We ain't on that. You got to go." And so he ended up in Algeria, where he settled for the majority of time. So 1969, he's there. And he attended the 1969 Pan-African Festival, which was, in short, a festival where Algeria got their independence, and so many people of the culture or who were celebrating independence were there, and so that kind of stabilized his time being there. He set up the Afro-American Center in Algiers. He saw a connection between the Palestinian struggle and the Black American liberation struggle, and so he started the international section of the Black Panthers. And they allowed for him to use the former North Vietnamese embassy. So he had, a place to start up, a place to maneuver, and a place to build what was going to be the international section of the Black Panthers. And so during that time, and I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, he was moving around with other leaders who, in the third world, I guess we would call, who were, who found victory over oppression as well. So we talking about North Korea, China. He really was trying to make his way in building our struggle to be an international struggle, which was something that he was even doing at home. He wanted to make sure that even like with the Free Huey movement, that it wasn't just a Black movement. It was one that was connected to other sources, so it could source itself and be bigger. And so while he was in North Korea, Kathleen Cleaver, former communication secretary for the Black Panther Party, over my shoulder, right here, there she is, had the couple's daughter there, and in I think it was Algeria, they had their son. So they were gone. She could come back and forth, but he was on exile running from the charge that he had. So he was really trying to ensure that the international sector grew and that the movement didn't lose its identity. So I mentioned earlier, there's a split between how one half of the party thought the Panthers should move forward and the other half thought it should move forward. And I'll just preview it here. Huey's side won because Eldridge was away, but the people who believed in Eldridge and his perspective went on to, go underground and really make the movement something a bit different, something that they felt it needed during that time. Um, and so after he lost control of the international section of the Panthers, and we'll talk more about that as we move forward, he left Algiers, I'm sorry, for Paris. Him and Kathleen moved there, and in 74, kind of disenchanted. She came back in 75, and then he came back as well. And when he came back, he was changed. He became a born again Christian, and he moved to the right as far as his politics were concerned. Over time, men change, things change, but the Black Power defined for this week was Eldridge going abroad, connecting with leaders from abroad, from the Middle East and Africa and China and Asia, and really looking to build an international coalition that could help for Black struggle, or we can get inspired by as well. Due to factors bigger than him, it didn't really materialize, but that was a very important step. And maybe had he and Huey had a coming to meeting of the minds, it may have been a lot more profitable, and I'm saying profitable in the means of making sure that the movement stayed less isolated on the United States, but more connected to movements abroad and revolutionary action abroad. Um, and we'll get back to Eldridge as we move forward. So Black Power defined through, international struggle, connecting to those who made revolution and tried to bring that philosophy here to the United States. Talked Cuba, talked Algeria, talked North Korea, talked France when he, finally came home. So let's move forward to the as they would say, to the Nixon administration. So Nixon was very, and I talked about this a couple weeks ago, so we'll move a little bit faster. Um, we'll talk more specifically around Nixon and his war on drugs and his police targeting. When we get into the week about Black business, we'll talk about some of his business policies, and some of his affirmative action and education policies. And then we'll talk later about, lasting legacy around that. But, one thing that was an issue during that time in our history, in America's history, was the use and abuse of drugs in our community. This brought itself to a head with the use of um, heroin. Heroin was tearing up the community in the 60s and 70s. There was well, I won't even go into the conspiracy. We know that that was a very big issue for us during that time. Even if you go back to the blaxploitation movies, which we'll be talking in a couple of weeks, you will see that was a problem, and it kind of laid the seeds for what crack would eventually be in the 80s. But to make a long story short, there were some laws set on the books that did two things. One, in and of themselves, the war on drugs wasn't a issue per se, but how it was targeted and who it was targeted to, that's what, I'm taking an exception with this time. So June 18th, 1971, Nixon declared drug abuse public enemy number one. Shortly before, remember J. Edgar Hoover said the Panthers was public enemy number one. And so they wanted to implement the Controlled Substance Act, 5 categories of drugs, strengthening prosecutions and sentencing, and previewed the crack epidemic policies of the 80s. Also, no-knock warrants. So as we see, more continued harassment by law enforcement on revolutionary organizations and other ones. No-knock warrants allow for you to, Big said in the song long ago, kick in the door, wave in the fofo, kind of that kind of activity. And then the creation of the Drug Enforcement Agency targeting Black communities systemically. So this was a time where these targeted actions and legal frameworks really put into perspective how this war on Black liberation was moving forward. So even if you're accused of something through misinformation, through COINTELPRO, through any of these things, you had a legal framework to say, well, not only did you have guns, you were selling drugs, planting some drugs on you, now you get mandatory minimums. And we make sure that any of the progress you made during civil rights, any of the fights you thought you had during Black Power, and while we're in the Black Power, we're going to stump it out and make sure that, it's not there. So it's, targeted attacks by not only departments within the government, but through the legal structure as well, was really starting to take a toll on, our community. All this done by somebody who ended up getting caught doing all kinds of stuff and having to resign. So it's ironic in that way, but definitely that war on drugs was something that was used to not only um, get a hold on drugs, but also target Black liberation as well. So we got the Controlled Substances Act of 1971, the Office of Drug Abuse and Law Enforcement, January 1972. You got he created the Drug Enforcement Agency in 1973. And so this ongoing kind of pursuit of what we would eventually see when crack hit in the 80s. So now you got all these laws in place, you got all this infrastructure in place. You still have all the laws that passed. Remember, we talked about those COINTELPRO laws. So now you got military surveillance, you got access to federal technologies and communication with local police. So all of these laws from the late 60s all the way through these early 70s were, making a play for what was happening then, but for the long play of crack and mass incarceration in the 80s and in the 90s. During this time, you also had a war in Vietnam that was really causing some firepower throughout the country. The war in Vietnam in the late 60s and the 70s was an interesting time because, we think about, the 50s and the 60s with the civil rights movement, and in the 60s and the 70s with the Black Power movement, targeted kind of approaches. But these were times where middle America and the kids of some of these leaders were a part of it. The hippies and the beatniks and all these other people during that time were taking their arms up against what was going on in civil rights, what was going on in the community. And so, the Vietnam War was in full, swing at this point. And for the purposes of this, I'm not going to go deep into the war itself, but I did want to talk about a couple of different things. One, how, there was a resistance to the war in a couple different ways. One, we knew that African Americans were being targeted, men specifically during that time, to go to the front lines of Vietnam. Let me pull up my stats to stunt here. I definitely wanted to make this case. Here it is. I thought I had it closer. Um, So between 66 and 69, blacks were 10% of military personnel. By the end of 65, the death rate was 21%, calling for a cutback by the Pentagon of black troops. Um, it was, so being the number of the population that we were during that time, we were overrepresented in draft status and overrepresented and going to the front lines, which ultimately led to overrepresentation in death. And so, even they called them the Bloods, the Bloods in Vietnam. Even they were facing problems. Confederate flags being flown, not having the rights to move up through the system like they wanted to, not having the ability to be themselves while they were there. And, there was a resistance from outside and there was a resistance from inside. So there was an anti-war movement also happening saying, hell no, we won't go. That was one of the things that brought civil rights, black power, and some of these other, I won't say white power, but some of these alternative hippie organizations together as well, saying none of us want to go to the war. None of us want to be drafted. And it ain't fair because, why do I got to go? Why am I putting this mix? And why do I have to do it for a system I don't even believe in? A system that I feel is lying to me, a system that I don't feel accurately, curtails what it is or lives up to what I believe it should. And so that was one place where it came. Stokely Carmichael, Dr. King, Students for a Democratic Society, which we'll get to, the Weathermen, or the Weather Underground, right here in Ann Arbor. We're really a part of that conversation. But what I want to do is I want to take a step back and I want to allow some of the Bloods in Vietnam to tell you about why they were, kind of disenchanted with what's going on. So I'm gonna pull this down and I'm gonna share my screen.
come. It's illegal, they say. It's against regulation. They come down hard. We have to. All right. If you don't take it off before you come in the theater, you don't get in theater. You know, this is the way they do this time. They said the afro was legal. Am I right or wrong? That's right. That's what they said. It was legal. We can sport the afro. All right. This man, there's a lot of brothers here. This man here's got an afro. This is an afro right here. Or somewhat of an afro. It's not big, no. But they want us to wear skin head. What they call it, high and tight. High and tight. It's not my culture. Am I right or wrong? They come over here. They get, all right, a Vietnamese girl. She called me a nigger. A nigga, a Vietnamese girl. I know it's not part of their language. Can't nobody tell me that's part of their language. But I'm gonna go over here. The beast, you know that. See, we go over here. We fight. Okay, we fight to defend the water we drink, the land we grow our food on, and our way of culture. We also fight to protect Rockefeller's foundations. We fight to protect J.P. Kennedy's foundation. All these different kind of foundations that the black man can't partake of. You understand? And then we go back. We're continuously harassed. It's not necessary. This ain't what we heard. This is what we know. See, we've seen it from the bird's eye point of view. We are the people here now. See, we see it now. This ain't what we heard. You know.
Out in the Ville. Now, just like you said, these Oriental people don't know how to where the word nigga came from or nothing. They have to learn how to speak it. You go out there in that Ville. The first time I come over here, I goes out in the Ville. I falls into one of these places, and I'm thrown out because I'm black. You know, because I'm black. They don't like us. They say we start trouble. Now, who done put this stuff in their mind? You know what I mean? The beasts came over here and brainwashed these people. We get out here and try to do our thing, and they wants to downrate us. Right on. Because we're black. Because the beasts came over here and told them that we ain't nothing but trouble. Right. Because we got a strong rapper and they scared we're going to take the women away.
Right. Well, wait a minute. Let me tell you something about down south. Let's say down high in July this year right here, when the so-called the beasts, this is what we call them because they act savage and barbarous like animals.
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting in that, a couple of things. One, let me get that off the stage. Okay, there we go. Here we go. One, in that, these were brothers serving, and then two, having to deal with, what they were dealing with. But before I go too far, I don't know if you saw in the middle of it, you saw the brothers, shaking each other's, dapping each other up. That was something, we always find a way to navigate through tough times. So one thing I did want to highlight is, the brothers, we call them the Bloods, if you saw the Spike Lee movie, it was called Five the Bloods. It was about the young brothers who was going into Vietnam. They end up going back looking for something. But, even during those times, through all of that resistance and all of that, we still had some culture and some soul to us. So I want to take a quick moment and talk about, how the brothers created the DAP and, how we shake hands and do all that today started with the brothers in Vietnam. So give me a second. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to look at that.
DAP, an acronym for Dignity and Pride, is much more than a handshake. It originated among Black soldiers during the Vietnam War, who, in addition to fighting for their lives on foreign soil, also faced attacks of racism, segregation, and reports of being shot and killed by white U.S. soldiers during combat. The DAP was developed by Black soldiers as a symbol of strength and solidarity and their commitment to protecting one another.
My whole tour in Vietnam, when you met a Black soldier, you had a DAP, you had a special handshake. You got to the point where you could even tell what part of the country he was from, because everybody had their distinctive, the DAP or handshake. And you definitely could tell if it was in your company, because everybody had their little nuance.
This is the greeting. This is the greeting of the brother, of my brother. I'm glad to see him. I don't have to know his name. Just the fact that he's Black is good enough for me. Yeah. We know we got a common ground. We got a cause to fight.
Since the end of the Vietnam War, the DAP has broadened and become a part of mainstream American culture. However, we must never forget its original meaning of unity and taking care of one another.
Come together as brothers. We may bump heads, but we always come back together. So.
Yeah, so I think even as we talk about the trials and tribulations of what we go through as a people, it's always a bright side to that. It's always a way that we find. Yeah, I love that story too. I love it too. A way to just even my son talk about how him and his friends do their little thing. Me and my sons, we got a little one that we do together. Just because one, what it means and what it stands for. And so so the Bloods was over there handling what they had to handle. And what was tough was the Vietnam War was something that wasn't popular. Vietnam War was something that people wasn't really feeling, it wasn't really digging. So World War II, everybody came home to parades and all this stuff. World War II was tough. You had people coming home protesting. You had people coming home saying, now you're addicted to drugs. We don't even want to be around you. We don't want to see you. You had people not being welcomed home. If you watch the movie, I try to make it easy for people. Dead Presidents. If you see when Anthony come home, like one day he had on his came home in his army or a Navy uniform. He was the man for about 24 hours. Then after that, he had to just get back into life and deal with it. And that's kind of what happened to a lot of Vietnam vets. Some of them became anti-war. Some of them became Panthers. Some of them went to the Black Liberation Army. Geronimo Pratt was one who served and became, a big dog in the Panthers and helped them learn, military training and the things like that. So, it was a tough war. Nixon eventually got us out of it, and we'll talk about that more as we move through our discussion. So I just want to kind of bring that up around the DAP. And also wanted to give just a little bit of love to the anti-war resistance. Students for a Democratic Society. Listen, the Panthers got in trouble for doing stuff, and they were supposed to be target public enemy number one. But what some of them anti-war cats was doing, blowing buildings up, going in government buildings, setting themselves on fire, burning their draft cards, doing all kind of stuff. But because these were, sons and daughters of the power structure, they were dealt with a lighter touch. But they did a lot to help the full movement moving forward. And I'll even say, it was through some of their efforts that one of the biggest enemies of the Black power structure, as far as COINTELPRO, was able to be dismantled and disbanded. And so I can put it in both, but I'll keep it here. Let's get rid of this. And let's bring this back up here. This is one of my favorite times in our history to talk about, because up until this point, COINTELPRO did any and everything they wanted to kill, to survey, to conspire against the Black power movement, and they had the green light to do it. So when we're talking about anti-war, I want to tie it in this way, because 1974 or 1971, COINTELPRO operations officially ended. The existence is revealed. So some anti-war activists broke into a government building in Pennsylvania looking to get the A1 draftees and burn the files. So people who are going to walk into a government building, burn some files, so people wouldn't be sent to Vietnam, right? Imagine if the Panthers broke into government buildings and did that. What would have happened to them? But they was looking for that. They looked over and saw another file cabinet and start seeing these documents about targets in the Black Power movement. Make a long story short, they take the information, they leak it to the press, and the press runs with it, and it is a phenomenon of things happening. So now you have, just to put it in context, you have J. Edgar Hoover has already passed. And now you get this big exposure of what was going on in COINTELPRO against Black organizations dating back to Dr. King and them. We in the 70s now, dating back to the Montgomery bus boycott. And all the Malcolm, Dr. King, you name them were in there. Panthers, people who were supposed to be communists, people, all these things. And so it hit the press, and it was such an interesting time because you were on the cusp of having the Watergate scandal and the presidential resignation of Nixon, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. We had the COINTELPRO being, and we'll talk about this more later in the conversation in a couple weeks. In 1975, the Church Committee, a senator named Church, he wanted to get into a Watergate kind of investigation style of what happened during COINTELPRO and what they were doing. And so we'll talk a lot more about that. We'll spend a lot of time talking about that because, what undermined it in my, estimation, what undermined Black Power was the COINTELPRO program led by the FBI in conjunction with the local police. So we'll spend a lot of time, kind of like we did on the Kerner Commission when they looked at, when the federal government looked at what happened during the riot. So we'll spend a lot more time talking about this. And so this was a sweet spot for me as far as history. But by this point, the damage was already done. Many organizations, news organizations, initially refused to publish it. They didn't want to believe it. But when they found that these documents were real, one thing about the press, what the press used to be, I don't know if it's going to be that anymore with what we got going on. But the press wanted a story and they wanted to get it out. So now you have proof that, let's take a step back. Just from a modern society perspective in this time, you had Kennedy murdered in 63, I believe it was, 62, 63. You had Dr. King, you had Malcolm X, you had Medgar Evers, you had the 4 little girls bombed, you had what's going to be a Vietnam War, which we shouldn't be in. Scandals around the White House and impeachment going on against a president. You have all this mistrust going on around our government systems, and time after time after time, the stuff that the revolutionary folks have been telling you is starting to come out and come to pass. Even to the point where now, even if you are a part of the system, you like either one, damn, I can't believe we're doing all that, or two, why don't y'all cover it up better? Basically saying from the inside out. So, I'm the fall of COINTELPRO, I think was an amazing thing, but the damage was already done. The laws were already passed. The initiatives were already in place. Technology at that time was in place. Government surveillance was in place. The conspiracies that they put against one another, deteriorating the community, was already in place. And by that point, you could stand back and just kind of watch it fall. And so, while it felt good and everybody could see that this was a government action against, and it wasn't just niggas can't work together for freedom. No, it was targeted, an unlimited budget to make sure that we didn't. So I'm glad that was seen, and I'm glad that we'll talk more about the Church Committee and some of the true atrocities that happened against the Black Revolutionary Organization. So we started with Nixon, talking about how he was putting law and order together, right? And so now all this is coming apart. Which brings us to Watergate. Just listen, it just gets no better. Listen, it'll be when I'm older and my kids are looking at these times from 2000, maybe from 2000, because that's when I became an adult. It's from 2000 all the way to when we're done. So from when Bush v. Gore happened to 9/11 to the what was it? The subprime mortgage and the stock market crashed, to the Obama years, to the Trump years, to Biden years, through COVID, through what we got going on now. We're going to see the same things that they uncovered. We're going to have a chance to uncover because things just haven't been, right. And we know that. But back to Watergate. So basically it was a break-in into Democratic offices to get wiretaps on their adversaries. Sound a lot like what happened in Panther offices, right? Sound about what happened into the SELC and to Malcolm and them. So they could get some information to basically win an election and move forward, and among other things. And so to make a long story short, Nixon tried to weasel and wuzzle his way out of saying he had nothing to do with it. It was people doing their own thing. a trial ensued or an investigation ensued. And even his own party was like, hey, bro, we ain't going down for you. You got caught. You shouldn't have got caught. We ain't saying you did it. We just saying you heads got to roll, and you got to roll. And ultimately he was forced to resign because he didn't want to get impeached. And they probably had a lot more dirt that they ain't won out. And so, that was another moment where Black America and anybody who wasn't with the powers that be at that moment kept saying, we've been trying to tell y'all, we've been trying to tell y'all through art, we've been trying to tell y'all through revolution, we've been trying to tell y'all through politics, we've been trying to tell y'all through all this stuff that there's an active funded, illegal but legal mode to disarm and unempower Americans in this country. It ain't because people lazy, it ain't because they slowful, it ain't because they ain't got the ambition and drive. It's because there are targeted attacks from our government against everybody. And now you can see they're doing it against themselves. So this was a very interesting time. And so let's take a step back and let's look at Nixon's Watergate and Nixon's resignation. That's someone said from Akron 1974, if it was me doing the crime, they wouldn't hesitate to throw me in jail. Just because Mr. Nixon got the president before his name, that shouldn't make him any different. And so people weren't crying and shedding tears over this. People were starting to get a little satisfaction because they were still facing hell in their own lives about what was going on. So let's take a look at a commemorative of what happened during the Nixon years and how it had an impact on government trust.
"40 years ago yesterday, Richard Nixon became the first and only president of the United States to resign from office. He had announced his decision the previous night in a televised speech from the Oval Office.
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow. Vice President Ford will be sworn in as president at that hour in this office."
It was a 16-minute speech in which the president seemed calm but controlling, obviously, very deep emotions.
Nixon was facing almost certain impeachment and likely criminal charges over the Watergate scandal and the attempted cover-up that followed. After Nixon departed and Gerald Ford was sworn in, Ford declared that, quote, "Our long national nightmare is over." Joining us with more is historian Kenneth C. Davis, author of the popular Don't Know Much series of history books. Kenneth, good morning.
Good morning.
Nixon resigned basically because his own party told him he had to get out, right?
Yes, Barry Goldwater and two other Republican members of Congress came to Nixon and said, "You're going to be impeached and most likely convicted if you don't resign." And he went to his family. His family urged him to continue to fight, but he decided, even though he said in that famous speech, "I have never been a quitter," he decided to quit and, of course, made history, the first president to resign. Gerald Ford came in, the first president who had never been elected, because he had been appointed vice president after Nixon's vice president, Spiro Agnew, had also resigned. So it was an extraordinary period in American history.
Take us back. What was the ripple effect of all this?
The ripple effect, I think we still feel it because it changed how Americans saw the White House. It changed the sense of trust we had in government completely and I think irrevocably. If we have a sense of not trusting Washington anymore, you can really almost date it from Watergate forward and this tremendous constitutional and political tragedy and controversy that struck the nation.
Nixon, of course, isn't the only president who faced impeachment. There have actually been two presidents who've been impeached.
That's correct. Let's separate out impeachment from being guilty of something, because impeachment is like in criminal trial, an indictment. It doesn't mean you're charged and you're going to be tried. Under the Constitution, the House impeaches by a simple majority. The Senate then gets to try the president in this case, although other federal officials can be impeached as well.
Benjamin Franklin wanted to add the power of impeachment to the Constitution. Why back then did he think this was something that should be in it?
Well, he said very simply at the Constitutional Convention in 1787, if we don't have a way to get rid of a president, an executive who's corrupt or incompetent, the only choice we have is assassination. And so they came up with impeachment, which was an old British idea that was used to remove members of the king's council. They couldn't impeach the king, but they could impeach his ministers. And of course, the phrase they came up with was 3 reasons: bribery, treason, and this amorphous high crimes and misdemeanors.
Mm-hmm. Gerald Ford once said, an impeachable offense is whatever a majority of the House considers it to be at any given moment in history.
That's completely true.
There's talk now of impeaching Obama. Do you think it's a possibility?
Well, it's certainly a possibility. A simple majority in the House could do it. It's extremely unlikely. Both of the impeachments in our history of Andrew Johnson, Lincoln's successor, and Bill Clinton were very politically motivated, both, of course, acquitted in their Senate trials. But this is always a possibility under the constitutional system, where the House of Representatives can, by a simple majority, impeach a president.
Yeah. I did it from that perspective. I brought that information from that perspective because I wanted it to be a wider kind of lens on looking at the Nixon years and his impeachment. And impeachment nothing now. Yeah, I didn't know there was a DAP. Yeah, that's where the DAPs came from. Crazy. Yeah, it is. Yeah, so we are under a president that has been impeached. Real talk. That tells you how far we've come from the years of what we look at as a very terrible time in our history. Let's see. Okay, so let's take a break from the federal government and let's go back to the Panthers here. So I kind of previewed it and teed it up earlier. The Panthers were at a crossroads. 2 classes ago, we went down the rabbit hole of how, the full government attack, assaults on Panther offices, assaults on Panthers, folks getting killed, offices being bombed, full go by the government against the Panthers, which led to a couple of things. One, a very tinged personification of the Panthers and community. They're just shooting out with cops. Oh my God, I don't know if we feel the same way we used to about them. You had a lot of people stuck in prison, young people from their teens to their early 20s facing football numbers, and not enough money to handle that. You had leaders locked up. Huey was locked up. Bobby was locked up. Eldridge was locked up or abroad. And you had COINTELPRO still, one thing that was so masterful, and I don't mean that in a good way, about their work was they sowed seeds of iniquity. Remember, one of their rules was don't have them working together. Don't let them talk to each other. So we talked about how they expanded so fast that there was no really central governing body, and each chapter, though there were protocols and things you had to do, may not have been able to follow them because they were just moving so fast. And so now you get to a point where, we ended the class 2 weeks ago. Huey finally gets out of prison from the case. So 1967, he gets locked up for, murdering a cop. By 1970, he's out. But at that same time, you got Eldridge gone, and you have Bobby Seale still locked up on some Trump charges waiting to get out. And so now you have this big ideological shift. Huey comes home, and the Free Huey movement was so big, it kind of made him more than a man. It made him a myth, a legend. Just he was something to fight for. So while we all want freedom for everybody, we want to free Huey. And it made him the documentary we will watch a little bit of. It made him go from a man to a myth. So he's coming home, one, having gone through who knows in prison. It's a book he has called Revolutionary Suicide, and another one, To Die for the People, where he talks about some of the things he had to go through in prison during that time, being stuck in solitary confinement, being brutalized, being, just out of the public eye while his organization is growing. and then, you know, having time to sit back and watch the murder and the like shooting fish in a barrel kind of a thing that the government was doing towards the Panthers. You know, he said, you know what, I got a couple of ideas here. We need to go back to being community driven, because remember when we started talking about the Panthers initially, they wanted to protect themselves from police oversight. They wanted to feed kids in the community. They wanted to ensure that they had self-determination to do the stuff they wanted in the community. Well, over time, as personalities, as the times called for more they put on their plate. He said, we need to go back to the programs, our survival programs, feeding these kids, getting the medical clinics going, school programs. We need to be kind of a welfare system, if you want to be honest. Because one, we won't be around long enough. If they kill us all, we won't be a revolution. And we need to kind of I kind of see it that way. And Eldridge, you know, in Algeria, like, hell no. We a revolutionary organization. We said we was going to do revolution. We said we was going to overthrow the government. Let's keep doing that. And so it was a very big divide in the Panthers. And, you know, being as, so I say it like this, and I don't mean it by personality, or I don't mean it by people. When you saw Trump and Elon together, you was like, damn, this is a powerful combination. But you knew it wasn't going to work long. Those personalities don't work well together. That's kind of how it was with Eldridge and Huey. Huey first like, this is my shit. You know, first of all, you know, I'm the one that brought this out of here. Not saying that, you know, the revolution is mine, but how I see revolution happening through this organization. And Eldridge is like, well, yeah, that's cool, but I made it bigger than what it ever has been. So it's a part of mine too. And we both built this thing. And while you was gone, we kept it going. And we kept this thing going. And we got you out. So, you know, we all gonna be doing this thing. But they couldn't exist together because they just saw it two different ways. Which, you know, looking back on it, and this was the crust of my first class on economics at Jim Crow. You had W.E.B. Du Bois thinking about the talented 10th and how that group would lead. You had Marcus Garvey saying our back to Africa, or our Pan-Africanist push is what we need to be doing. And then you had Booker T. Washington saying we need to build our economic base and then take from them that way. All of them was right. You just had to find where you fit in. But, you know, this also reminds me of the East Coast, West Coast war. If you grew up in the 90s, you know, Pac and Big got into an East Coast, West Coast war. They called it this big war when it was really just a problem between two factions. If you was on Bad Boy or if you was on Death Row, but we made it bigger than what it should have been. And they both ended up dying on the West. Well, this was kind of similar. Eldridge is in Algeria. Huey is in Oakland, ready to take back over. They both want to move the party forward. They both want to move revolution forward, but got two different ways to do it. And this rift between them, it really hurt the party in that, one, you got people in prison now, you got people on watch lists now, you got people, you know, who dedicated their life to this, and now you got two leaders at the top fighting. So it did that, but then it also forced camaraderie to really, really fall among the Panthers. Some of them said, no, I'm going with Huey and I see it his way. We need to do it this way. Some said, no, I'm with Eldridge. We need to do it this way. And because COINTELPRO was able to this is 1970 when this is happening. What we just looked at COINTELPRO being dismantled, that was 71. So they had the balls rolling. So you had, for the Huey people, hey, Eldridge and them said this, send it to the chapter, send it to the individuals. Hey, man, this ain't coming from them. This come from COINTELPRO. Hey, man, Eldridge and his faction said this, that we gonna do it this way. So now it's causing much more contention among each other. So let's say we all from the same city. Well, we going Eldridge's way. We going Huey's way. Now we got problems with each other. We ain't fighting the pig. We fighting each other now. And that's how COINTELPRO worked. They went to undermine the relationships. They wanted to undermine the ability to come together. They wanted to undermine the integrity with each other. So this caused a lot of problems, and it led to some deaths. It led to some imprisonments, and it led to the revolution, you know, or what we thought would be the fight for Black power to go underground. Let's see. And so, as the press would do, and as we would do, because we are part of it, we laid the foundation. The press found out it was a problem between Huey and Bobby. So one of the local stations who wanted to have update ratings, they had Huey on. And they said, all right, we're going to call Eldridge on, like a reality show. We're going to call Eldridge. They get on the radio together and they start going back and forth with each other. You ain't this, you ain't that. I'm kicking you in the party. I'm kicking you out the party. You a son of a this, you a punk, you a Uncle Tom, you a this, you a that. And so in front of a national audience, this organization that had brought fear to the government and the country of those who didn't want to do right by our folks, and we were going to take it through revolutionary means, basically got what they were looking for, and they cracked the shield through all of that work that they were able to do, and it led to a undermining of the Panthers, and we started undermining ourselves. Again, COINTELPRO using their best strategies, creating a culture of paranoia. So even now, I'm talking about during that time, even if you were in the party, you don't know if somebody is an informant. You don't know if they COINTELPRO. You don't know if they're Huey or they more of a Eldridge kind of person. You don't know if you don't know. So all of the 10-point platform, all the things we use to build that camaraderie it's being deteriorated. And it's happening because of internal issues, but also external issues, as far as COINTELPRO and the government and local police still on your tail. And now I'm on probation or I'm on parole now. And now I'm getting a little bit older and I ain't a kid like I used to be. I don't know how I feel about this no more. I don't know if I want to even do it no more. Thinking about people who are in the Panthers from around the country. Man, I lost my brother, I lost my daddy, I lost my mama, I lost my friends. I'm locked up. So it was a very tough time for the Panthers, and it forced a lot of action underground. So I want to take a moment and we're going to watch a bit of this documentary that gives a little more personification to what we just talked about here. And, we're going to watch probably about 5 minutes of it. I think it's important because I really want to hone in on how this rift really caused for what we'll see, from maybe 1974. No, maybe 1971, right after the split, on to about 76 to 80, where some of the efforts around what we started with, as far as Black power, as far as political power, as far as all these things, maybe devolved into some more of the things that maybe we don't want to see, and we'll talk about that as we move forward today. So I'm gonna play this clip and then we'll move forward here. Okay. I'm gonna share my screen here.
Where he is held on a charge of killing a policeman. The words "Free Huey Newton" have been chalked and spray painted on 1,000 fences and walls. This spring, the California Supreme Court found some errors in his trial and ordered a new trial.
When the case was given to the jury, they were sequestered for 4 days to deliberate.
It was extremely tense. You could feel the energy and the tension in
One of
the
the first
air.
Black Panther women.
People were talking about doing all types of things, that, Oakland could explode. Matter of fact, every city across America could explode that day.
The Panthers had been getting ready for guerrilla warfare, and they said the sky's the limit if the jury convicted him.
Shouting, "We want Huey now," the crowd got their wish. At this hour, Huey Newton is a free man.
Everybody was just jubilant that day. Finally, he gets to walk out of that jail a free man. The sky was the limit, and the sky turned blue.
The image that was mobilized to create the Free Huey movement gave Huey almost mythic status in the party. He'd become an image and not a man, and that gave him power that ultimately proved dangerous.
Come to the clinic tomorrow for an appointment.
He came out focusing on returning to the survival program, the breakfast program, the free health clinics, free food program, and the sickle cell anemia research program. I remember Huey P. Newton saying, the Black Panther Party was not going to last. He said the organization was going to get destroyed. Based on the way we were very aggressive, and we kind of realized that this wasn't going to last long.
We know those are not revolutionary programs. They're at best survival programs. We know that the people are in jeopardy of genocide, and that if they do not survive, then it won't be possible to bring about revolution.
We were really trying to connect more with the people in the community, and this was a big push, and there was probably some people who were not happy.
We have a Breakfast for Children program, you know, but that's not what the Black Panther Party is all about, you see. I don't agree with saying that the Black Panther Party supports Breakfast for Children, that's all that we're about, you know. Don't talk about
right there.
The Black Panther Party is for overthrowing the United States government.
Those people who were on the other side of this issue politically did not see the Black Panther Party as a vehicle for social service. We saw it as a vehicle for political transformation, radical change, for revolution. So we couldn't get excited about survival.
Eldridge Cleaver, who, while sitting comfortably in Algeria, was assailing the Black Panther Party as being weak, and it didn't have any more muscle, and it was a reform organization, a Breakfast for Children club, and he denounced the party, and he denounced the chief administrator of the party at that time, who was David Hilliard. He wanted to have even more bloodshed, which was not endearing us to the community.
There are also problems with the Panther 21 case. There were legal fees, and there became questions about how much of the money that was raised for the Panther 21 was actually getting back to defend the Panther 21. We wrote an open letter really criticizing national leadership in Huey P. Newton, and responsive national leadership, and in particular Huey P. Newton, was to kick out the Panther 21. They were expelled from the Panther Party. Eldridge came to the defense of the Panther 21.
The Black Panther Party has split into two factions, namely the Cleaver and Newton supporters. This dissension offers an exceptional opportunity to aggravate and possibly neutralize through counterintelligence.
The FBI was picking at Huey and picking at Eldridge, and I don't know who else they were picking at to create this sense of distrust.
In the future, submit counterintelligence proposals against the Cleaver faction in the Black Panther Party, designed to widen the existing rift, effectively driving a wedge between Newton and Eldridge Cleaver.
That's what they did.
Ensure this mailing cannot be traced to the Bureau.
What we thought the FBI wanted to do was kill us, blow up our offices, shoot us. I don't think we understood exactly how insidious their project was.
They created a culture of paranoia, which was incredibly destructive. In this sense, it was the ultimate intelligence success, being able to pit the party against itself. And the Panthers' internal conflict would soon erupt in the mainstream media.
Good morning. Yes, it's
On the media.
all right. And this is Jim Dunbar with Nancy Ann Fleming and Gary Bentley.
We had become aware of some sort of a rift that had come to pass between
Remember the Source Awards
Huey and,
'95?
Eldridge. We booked
All
Huey
in the video.
and arranged the call from Eldridge in Algeria to take advantage of that.
We've got lots of things coming up here on AM this morning. Lots of things that you'll like to see, and we're looking forward to them too, right here on AM.
I'll not try to sugarcoat this. We thought this was a wonderful opportunity to build audience. So we decided to go ahead and put the two of them together.
I only we're about out of time. Do you
you have anything you want to say to any of your followers here in the Bay Area?
Well, I just want to comment on the expulsion of the New York 21 because it looks to us as though, as a result of the actions taken by David Hilliard over a long period of time, the party has fallen apart at the seams.
Okay, fine. Good to talk to you. Thank you very much.
To the people.
Huey's goal in having Eldridge on the show was to show people that he and Eldridge were on the same page, and Eldridge sabotaged that. So Huey was livid. He was embarrassed. He was furious. And so within 10 minutes or so, he called back.
Mr. Cleaver?
Yes.
Just hold on. Eldridge.
Hey, what's happening?
Yeah, you got the bombshell this morning. Well, very embarrassing for me. So I'm warning you now, or notifying you, that the intercommunal section, you hear?
Yeah?
The intercommunal section is expelled.
That's not the best way to deal with that.
Well, this is the way I'm going to deal with it.
Well, then I think you're a madman too, brother.
But I'm not a coward like you, brother, because you run off to get little Bobby Hutton killed. But I stay here and face the gas, you see? So you're a coward and you're a punk. You understand?
I think you've lost your ability to reason, brother.
Hey, brother, you heard when I call you. That's what I feel about you now. You're a punk.
It was a split in the party, and within days, we began to feel just how bad it was.
Someone has to be disciplined. And my recommendation is to discipline Eldridge Cleaver, not for the criticism itself, but the way in which it was presented.
The word got back to us that Eldridge had put out the edict that the streets were not supposed to be safe for Panthers. Whether he said that or not, he was in Algeria, we were here, who knows? It was chaos.
There were certain chapters that stayed with Huey. Many of the people who followed Eldridge leave the party and go underground. And then some people just were confused and frustrated and walked away. They don't know which faction of the Black Panther Party to follow or if they should deal with Panthers at all.
The party had leaders who at that point were not worthy of the dedication of their followers. And I think that that was probably the worst aspect of the party, is that I think some of the followers felt betrayed by their leaders.
The split becomes so deep that it erupts, in some cases, into violence, into fights and into shootings between Panthers.
This is exactly what the Bureau, in fact, wanted to see happen in the first place. This was part of what the COINTELPRO operations were really all about. J. Edgar Hoover, in particular, says we've been pitting people against each other. That's all worked out really well. But, you know, now we don't even have to worry about it anymore. Now they're just going to keep it going on their own, and we can step back a little bit and just let them play it out. In the midst of all of this turmoil, the Panthers.
Yep, so we'll stop it there. Yeah, so much for a good Sunday morning so far. Nah, but yeah, so you know, three kind of things. One, this didn't just happen. Brothers just couldn't agree. You know, brothers can work it out. You know, a shout out to Willie Hutch and a song from the Mac soundtrack. We'll talk about that next week. But two, the party was going in two different directions. And then three, it forced the party underground. And when we say underground, well, let's just move on into it. I won't even wait to get into all of that. And we'll use the lens of going underground to where is it here? Underground movements. So when we start talking about underground movements, I'm gonna primarily talk about two movements or two organizations. But there were a lot. We're talking about the Black Liberation Army started in 1971. The Black Liberation Army was always a thing, but it was kind of like the underground portion of the Panthers. One that, you know, had a goal of Black militant resistance. it was not centralized or organized like that with a common leadership, but it was, or a chain of command, but there was various organizations collectively working together simultaneously, independent of each other. So, we're to the point now where, the organization, it was about armed struggle. You know what I'm saying? You killed all these Panthers, you threw all these people in prison. We still see y'all as the ops, and we aren't taking it laying down. We tried it the 10-point platform way. We tried it the organizing and mobilizing through community and feeding kids way. We tried it through elective politics. Now we're devolving into this. And it wasn't about speeches and all of that. It was about three major things. It was about freedom from repression of the powers that be, and they did it through three major things: armed resistance to police brutality. You attack, we attack. That's just how it go. That's why so many brothers and sisters ended up, in prison, because you attack us, you knock my head off, I knock yours back. Expropriation of funds. Well, let me take a step back. I forgot this idea when we start talking about this split from Eldridge and Huey. The revolution, in every situation where the poor class overtook the power structure and the rich, this revolution happened. It was an overthrow of the government. It was the Day of Atonement where things switched. Folks in power ended up dead and out of power. Those who didn't have it ended up in power through guerrilla warfare. So during this time of Black Power, everybody's preparing for the revolution. Even we talked about a couple weeks ago with Gil Scott-Heron, the revolution won't be televised. People to the core of their souls believe that during this time of unrest, between the riots that were going on, the protest that was going on, the anti-war movements, blowing up of government buildings, killing of cops and of people, that a revolution was going to take place, and the powers that be, big bad America, was going down. That's what people put their lives on the line for. And so as you start to talk about, well, why would an organization, resist against the police? We thought it was going to be a revolution. Why would they go and find creative ways to make some money to fund it? Because they thought it was going to happen. They thought, okay, you robbing the bank, or you taking these funds for the revolution. I'm not taking them to go get fat and to go eat. If I'm robbing the bank, I'm robbing it so we can get what we need for the revolution. Revolution coming, and we need to be ready for it. And that's what happened. It devolved into that. And so it was armed resistance, expropriation of funds, and international solidarity. The people in Ireland, the people in the Mau Mau in Kenya, the Black Liberation Army really connected to the third world, and that was their way of justifying, this happening. So the Black Liberation Army is one of the many kind of groups doing this. So when we talked about all of these organization Panther chapters that were being attacked the 2 weeks ago, in every city there was a Panther chapter. They were being annihilated. They were being accosted, killed, murdered. Those people said, well, fine, we going underground. So every city that there was a Panther chapter, there was a version of a Black Liberation Army. It might not have been, okay, I'm the Seattle version and you the Texas version and you the Houston. Nah, we do revolution a different way now. We don't do it that way. And Eldridge with us, let's fight the power this way. And so you have all of these unrelated chapters and movements happening. And unfortunately, it was prime opportunity for the powers that be to, take advantage. What was the revolution? What they think was going to happen once the revolution arrived? So that's a good question. So when the revolution arrived, remember when we looked at it a couple of weeks ago, Fred Hampton said the proletarian against the bourgeoisie, or the power structure. They believe the power to the people. The people would get in power and not the billionaires. So in today's language, it would be the people have the power, not the billionaires. And when the people are in power, and that's why socialism, communism, and all the other isms were big ideology for this movement, saying, well, now folks won't go hungry because everybody gonna have food. Folks won't be starving. I mean, folks won't be poor because everybody gonna have money. We'll make sure that there's a government structure, not capitalism, that will take the place of capitalism and ensure that we have everybody get land, everybody get bread, everybody get food, everybody get access to power, power to the people. The people would take the power. They really thought that Like the same thing that happened in Cuba, Castro's Cuba, they overturned it. When we think about what was going on in Algeria, they overturned the government, got rid of the colonizers. One thing I didn't do a good job of, especially during the civil rights class, was we were fighting for civil rights here, and our brothers and sisters on the mother continent were fighting against colonialism. So you're seeing these practices. Oh man, these people got free. Oh man, these people got free over there. We gonna do the same thing here. We read the books. We know what's happening. So this revolution was the revolution that happened in Cuba, happened in Algeria, happened every place that there was a colonized people. When they got out of their colonial powers and they took independence back, Lumumba and them, all those people, that's what they thought that was going to happen here. You know, some say it did in a different way. Some people say it didn't. But you know, so that's what people thought was going to happen. That's what they thought the revolution was: a change of power, redistribution of wealth and power from the few that have it now to the masses. And people bet their lives on it, and their kids on it, and their lineage on it. And for, you know, we saw what happened, you know, later on. So Black Liberation Army was one. Assata Shakur was a part of that, and we'll get into that a little bit. Overthrow the government. Yeah, that was the yeah, that was the whole point. You know, even going back just to be a little more clear about it, we tried it the We Shall Overcome way. We tried no federal. They were looking for the entire flip of the system. And so that's why they were reading what happened in, you know, China, what happened in North Korea, what happened in Algeria, what happened in Cuba, what happened in all these places. So these books that were on the Panther list to read were these books of one revolutionary ideology to say, well, think about the communist system. Look how it works for people. Look at the socialist system. Look how it works for people. Look at the power that came from guerrilla warfare doing this. Look at the power that came through organizing that did that. So this, you know, the Black Power, and there's a lot of different parts of the Black Power movement, but those who were revolutionary activists, they really thought that there was going to be an overthrow of the government, because the people who they admired and the people who they honored, they really thought that there was going to be an overthrow of the government. They really did. The whole thing, and it was going to be revolution everywhere. And the people were going to have the power to the people. And the people in power wouldn't allow for, you know, what happened when a few people had the power. But I love these questions. I'm glad we can go a little deeper on that, because this was so when you saw these activists saying this stuff and reading these books, they really thought, okay, well, now the system is going to look like this. Now we're going to make sure we got this. Everybody going to get 40 acres. Everybody going to get a mule. Everybody going to get a right to production. Everybody's going to get their fair share here, so we can have it. Yep. So Assata Shakur was a part of the Black Liberation Army in New York. And so when you know, even last week, when you heard about, you know, when she passed, you heard about all these things that that she may or may not have done. So, you know, I look at it two ways. One, me and my wife, we laugh. It's a line in Power, if you ever watched it. One of the seasons, the season where the 50 Cent character Kanan was getting close to Ghost's son. And Tariq at the time was kind of disappointed in his dad. He found out things wasn't all what it seemed. And Kanan told him, whatever they say your dad did, he did that shit. And so when you think about with Assata, I'm saying that tongue in cheek, because there's a line in between that. One, we know COINTELPRO, and we know that the government had a hand in trumped up charges. We know that they had a hand in conspiracy and all those things. But the Black Liberation Army wasn't playing. When I say this, I mean it for real. They were successful in their endeavors. When they needed money for a defense fund, they got it. When they needed folks to be backed up off of them because something happened, they got rid of them, and people went to jail for it. And so they was about that action. You know, they would say Assata did. You know, anytime it was a woman involved in any kind of activity, they would say, well, it was her. So she may or may not have did it. Who knows? But the Black Liberation Army, which she was a part of, was a real deal. You know, even her work with the Panthers. She was a Panther. She led the Harlem Children's Program, not Harlem Children's Zone, the Children's for Breakfast program. She left the Panthers because of the gender issues that were running throughout the party. Joined Black Liberation Army 1970s, early 70s. And we all know about her case 1973 on the New Jersey Turnpike, targeted by some cops and some state troopers, and one ended up dead and she ended up shot, and it was a case, and she was found guilty along with the other couple. One of the brothers died, the other one ended up getting found guilty too. And in 1979, members of the Black Liberation Army, along with some of their communist comrades from the country, including Mutulu Shakur from the Black Liberation Army, shout out Tupac, broke her out of jail. They pretended to be coming for a visit. They had some heat on them and they got her up out of there. And eventually she fled on to Cuba, and that's where she stayed till she died. There were other organizations, the Revolutionary Assault Team, 1971, the George Jackson Brigade, and remember that name as we move forward in our conversation. The MOVE organization of 1972, Philadelphia, who was looking to get off the grid and go back to nature, ended up in a confrontation with some cops, and a lot of them ended up in prison, maybe still be political prisoners today. I'll talk about the full list as we get to the end of the class. Another one, the Republic of New Africa, and these were more, so there was two kind of revolutionary underground groups. Those who were revolutionary activists, who were going to be more like the Black Liberation Army, more like the people getting it popping and handling their business that way. And some who said, well, we just need to reorganize, like the Republic of New Africa, a nationalist organization who believed in the creation of a independent Black majority country here in the Southeast United States. So the states you would know as the SEC, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, Alabama. They thought that was going to be ours. They wanted to see reparations, billions of dollars in reparations. They wanted to see a referendum on African Americans to determine the desires for citizenship, something that should have happened after the Civil War. You had the League of Revolutionary Black Workers that was formed here in Detroit, united a number of different revolutionary movements, growing in the auto industry sectors. Black workers were concentrated in Detroit in the 60s and early 70s. So the formation of this league was an attempt to form a more cohesive political organ guided by the principles of Black liberation and Marxist Leninism. So it was a lot of different ways that people organized Black power. And they always did, even through this Panther, arc that we've been on. But I want to focus on the Panther because they was the most notable. Let's see. We're almost here. I want to talk about two other major things. One, let me get this up here. Let me see if I missed it here. Thanks for the good information. I appreciate that. We talked about Assata Shakur. Let's talk about Angela Davis. She was a really big, and I always knew about her because my mama's name was Angela. She always said she had a big old afro and did the black fist when she was growing up for Angela Davis. So Angela Davis was always one that I admired along with Assata Shakur. But even with Angela Davis, her story is very interesting in that she was a scholar. While everybody else was doing all what they was doing, she was in the Panthers. She was a communist, but she was a scholar. She was a professor at UCLA in 1969. This is before we started to see the rise of Black studies. She studied a lot of different things. And so, just to make a long story short with this, because I don't want to go too far, but I do want to give Angela Davis her time and her credit. She was an acting professor at UCLA in 1969. She directed the political education programs of the Panthers in LA. The Panther, the LA chapter was crazy. It was nuts. Geronimo Pratt, who ended up being, trumped up on a fake murder charges, was expelled by Huey. And we'll talk about that as we move forward. Bunchy Carter, who founded the chapter there. Angela Davis was there. Elaine Brown was there for a while. Erica Huggins was down there for a while because John Huggins got murdered with Bunchy Carter down there. So the LA chapter was crazy. And, just something that I'll talk about later, so they killed all the leaders of that chapter. And you ended up seeing how, the Panthers of that chapter ended up becoming the Crips and tried to keep their political, opportunities moving. But then, finally evolved into racketeering. So, government, powers at its best, You know, you kill all the leaders of one of the strongest chapters. Remember, Watts went up in 66. Before everything else, Watts went up first, which led to this revolutionary action. They started, a chapter down there. They found a way to Panther shootout we talked about, and they later became the Crips, and later went into racketeering, crack in the 80s and the 90s, and and it is what it is. So this is really, really real poignant efforts by the government to undermine. Back to Angela Davis. So she was arrested. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. She was arrested for. So let me go back. So we talked about the George Jackson Brigade. George Jackson was a revolutionary who ended up, him and 3 others were in Soledad prison and ended up allegedly killing a guard for brutality. Angela Davis began working on his defense committee to help, that's something that the Panthers did. They wanted to, try to get the brothers locked up, as much help as they could get. And so she started working closely with the family to try to, help his defense and get him the right lawyers, get him, to deal with what he had to deal with. And, his little brother was one of her security detail, 17 years old. And so, she went and got a gun to keep herself safe if they let her security use them. Jonathan Jackson, the little brother of George Jackson, who was locked up for killing that cop or a prison guard, August 7th, 1970, walked into the courtroom and gained control of the courtroom in Marin County, again, where Pac was. Shout out to Marin. And he took the judge and the black, he was armed, and he armed the black defendants, and they took the judge and they took the deputy district attorney and 3 female jurors. They held them as hostage. The judge ended up dead with a shot to the head. The 3 black defendants, the other defendants got away. And you had government officials murdered. The judge and the 3 men taken were killed, and one of the gentlemen ended up dead. And so you had, to make a long story short, they said, wait, hold on. This gun is tied to Angela Davis. And she was working with the family. She must have been conspiring to be a part of this thing. And she was saying, I was there to help the defense. That's it. If you remember the movie Players Club, Ebony was like, I'm here to dance for y'all. That's it. And so she, that was crazy how the Panthers, how membership of the Panthers that was still there went underground. In the many ways that they went underground and tried to keep their political ties together, that it ended up devolving into the Crips. And for a while, the Crips was a political organization, and they stood for building the community. But when money, crack, and government came in, they devolved into racketeering. So crazy, right? But back to the Angela Davis part. So they're trying to throw her in, and then under California law, they said she was a part of the conspiracy. And so now she's on trial for the murder of officials and a storm in a courtroom. And she like, I wasn't even there. I had nothing to do with it. I was helping people's case, and that's all I was doing. And so 1970, they issued her. Who was it? No. Let me see here. Let me get my numbers right. So late August, she was put on the top 10 fugitive list they want to find her. Fast forward to October 1970, she was found in New York and brought to justice. So the trial ensued January 1971. She appeared in court and said, I'm innocent of this. I ain't had nothing to do with it. Y'all already know that. Y'all targeting me. This ain't right, kind of a thing. Thousands began to organize for Angela Davis in New York City. By February 1971, more than 200 local committees around the country were set up. Black people in defense of Angela Davis. John Lennon from Beatles fame and Yoko Ono contributed to the campaign and wrote a song and let the proceeds of the song go to her defense. Always wondered why I never was a big Beatles fan, and I remember hearing about John Lennon getting murdered, and I never understood why. I'm like, I wonder why'd they kill him? I'm starting to figure out, a lot about his character and what he did after his time with the Beatles. So, in 1972, after 16-month incarceration, the state allowed for her to be released from jail, and to retry to and figure out how they could move the case forward. A dairy farmer paid $100,000 in 1971, which is the equivalent of almost $500,000 in 2023, to help with the bail. And a wealthy business owner from the United Presbyterian Church paid her legal defense expenses. The trial was moved to Santa Clara County, and on June 4th, 1972, after 13 hours, an all-white jury came back with a verdict of not guilty. After the verdict, one of the jurors threw up the Black Power sign, and later told the reporters it was a sign of unity for all oppressed peoples. Later, the 10 jurors attended a victory celebration with the defense, basically saying, just because she was helping with the defense didn't mean she was in on that, and that she wasn't, guilty of that. So that's, a quick story of kind of, underground movement, which was Soledad Brothers, and how Angela Davis got caught in the mix. After that, she went on to continue her academic studies and continued to be a socialist and or a communist over time. And I have more information for that moving forward. The last kind of foray I want to take into the Panthers is, so, we talked about, let me change it real quick. Angela Davis. Let's get to the Panthers and politics. I always got to sneeze when I'm on here. Give me 1 second. Excuse me. Love it. Thank you. So here we go. Our last kind of topic for the day, and I'll be quick about this one, was the Panthers. Remember, we said it was a split. Huey said we need to focus on programs that can preserve the next generation and make sure that there is a next generation of revolutionaries. Hundreds were murdered, hundreds were imprisoned. We don't know who the ops are. We don't know who was a government agent. We want to rebuild our ties with the community. Let's feed these kids. Let's school these kids. Let's teach political education. Let's ensure that there's some health outcomes that can happen. We still gonna do revolution. We just might be able to do it right now. And then we don't never know what happened to Huey in prison. We don't know what happened to him. We don't know how they flipped him. We don't know how that might have been one of the ways he got out. We don't know. A lot of this stuff we don't know until we look at the church committee later. I'm kind of teasing that out. So basically they said, all right, 1972, 73, Bobby Seale said, or the Panthers said, we're going to do this. Bobby, finally home, finally free from all those trumped up charges, is about to run for mayor of Oakland. And Elaine Brown, who would later be the lead of the Panthers in their final years, is going to run for city council. So they said the chapters that we can trust, close your local offices. Remember, people were going underground. Some people say, oh, I'm done with it anyway. Some people went underground and found revolution another way. But those who stayed on the faction, they said, all right, close your office, come to Oakland, and we're going to run for office. We want to register as many people as we can. We need all hands on deck. So people from around the country closed their offices, and they came to help. Now, this was a crazy campaign all through the late 60s. Bobby Seale running around here trying to, do this and that, Now he's running for office. So we're going to see the Panthers take full political strides now. The numbers in the force was dwindling. So they said, we need to concentrate our power here where we started, and let's get this thing done. So the idea was to consolidate power, register voters, and get people out to vote for Bobby for mayor, Elaine for city council, and we're going to take power the way we've seen power used against us. We're going to use it that way. So if you're going to have a sheriff, I want to figure out who the sheriff is. If y'all going to have grants and programs, we want to oversee the grants and programs. If y'all got construction opportunities, we want to oversee that. And we want to have somebody in city council that can speak to that side of it. So it was really understanding, well, this is the force they used against us. We want to use this force to help our community. All right, well, bet, let's do it. Yeah, it was a great kind of pivot. Okay, well, let's use this. And these were the smart ones. You know what I'm saying? Let's do it. So to make a long story short, they ran an amazing campaign. And Bobby found himself in a runoff with the mayor. So long shot, Bobby Seale is in a runoff with the mayor. Came through the primary and in a runoff now. They registered voters. He rode buses. He shook hands. He kissed babies. Because that was Bobby's personality. Huey was the intellect. Eldridge was the fire. He was the celebrity. And Bobby was the personality. He was the one, if anybody was going to do it, it was going to be Bobby Seale. And so they ran an amazing race. They took to the streets. They had a campaign slogan. We're going to give out 10,000 chickens and groceries away over this campaign. So they did the best they could. Because remember, they had the food program. They had the breakfast program. They're trying to show you this is what we're going to try to do for y'all. We're going to try to make sure we do it. Registered between 20 and 50K voters. The race was so close, it came down to the end. It was close, but no cigar. Bobby came in just after the mayor, and Elaine came in just out of city council. And so now you're at a crossroads with the party. There wasn't a plan B. They said, we're going to bring everybody home. We're going to do it here. He's going to get elected, and we going to rule this way. Panthers started in 66. Now we at 73. And so now you got Huey home. You got a fractured party, an attempt to run for office. You got underground action happening everywhere. COINTELPRO is gone, but the government ain't, and police powers aren't. And so now you're at this kind of crossroads in the party to where everybody trying to figure it out. Even I talked about earlier, Eldridge on his way from being exiled to try to come back home. And so some parties, some people, some parts of the parties are still doing breakfast in their respective cities, trying to help the community in their respective cities. Some people are getting older. Some people walking away from the Panthers and trying to figure out how they're going to put their life back together. People who, going to be serving the next 40, 50 years in prison, wondering why they did what they did. We thought revolution was going to happen. We really just wanted more than we shall overcome. We really just wanted freedom. We wanted peace. We wanted equality. We wanted land. We wanted bread. We wanted freedom. We just wanted a part of the American dream to do what we thought we wanted to do in this country. We ain't want to kill no cops. We ain't want to do all of that. We just wanted justice. We just wanted peace. We wanted the right to the same thing we shall overcome wanted. That's what they wanted. You know what I'm saying? And we tried it, begging you, getting hit over the head. It didn't work. We tried it the other way and it didn't work. And this is so kind of poignant because we know now we have maybe, let's say 73, 74. We know what the 80s bring with crack. We know what the 90s bring with mass incarceration and murder. We know what, the 2000s bring. So this was a very kind of crossroads moment for the party as we knew it. And over the next 5-6 years, the party is, almost vanquished. But it doesn't end without a new thrust of female leadership in the form of Elaine Brown. So we'll pick up there next week or in 2 weeks as we talk about kind of some of the final parts of the Panthers and how we look at the rest of our semester moving forward. So any questions or anything, drop them in the chat. I want to, we're just about done here. We'll next week, we will talk about the Black image and popular culture. So I've been trying to do it like this. We have a heavy one, and then we can have more good times. No pun intended. And then we have a heavy one, then we can have some more good times. So we'll be talking about Blaxploitation films and representation and empowerment and critique around, movies like The Mac, movies like Sweetback, movies like Foxy Brown, movies like Hell Up in Harlem, or just the 70s movies that had "Come On Sucker," Jive Turkey kind of narratives around them. We'll look at Blacks on TV in the forms of sitcoms and dramas. Some of our favorites, Good Times and The Jeffersons and Sanford and Son, and how that really started to revolutionize Blacks on screen, and a little more critique there. We'll also talk about how music changed from soul to funk, this fusion funk, jazz, this disco music that was coming out. And we'll touch briefly on just some athletes and some activism and commercialization, following up on Ali and some of his work, and some of the others. And then the week after that, we're talking Black business. The week after that, the continued fight for civil rights. We'll look at what was going on around school desegregation, affirmative action. We'll look at the church committee and some other things moving forward. And then finally, we'll just kind of do a wrap up. So we're just about to the end of the class. 1, 2, 3, 4 classes left after this one, and we'll be there. One thing we do know, though, even though the story was sad, we saw some great times come out of the 70s and in the 80s. That was my generation, and in the 90s, and in the 2000s. So though this part of the story is ending, there are still some stories to tell, and I'm excited about doing that as well. So I'm interested in keeping the thing going. I appreciate everybody for being here today. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube video, and stay involved. I just thank you for being here. This information is necessary. I always like to end it with this. We're living in tumultuous times, and we have to use the lessons of our ancestors to identify how we're going to move forward. What are you willing to do? What am I willing to do right now? I'm commissioned to tell our history, tell our story, make sure that we have it, that it's available for our next generation. I think that we'll be needing more of this information as we move forward in time. But we can't do it all in one day. So I want to thank y'all for joining us. It's been a great class, and anything you take from this, just know that the struggle continues, and we all have a part to play in the struggle. I'll see y'all next week. Peace.